Hi everyone, I'm Caroline Drummond-Smith and I wanted to put out today a message of hope. A message of hope never to give up on recovery, never to give up on your loved one if they have an eating disorder. Recovery is possible and I'm proof of that. I suffered with anorexia for 30 years and I'm now fully recovered. And I won't pretend it was an easy journey or a short one, but it is possible. So I'm just going to tell you a bit about how I got to where I am today. So when I was 16, I was sent to school in England. I'd been living abroad since I was 4, so coming to England was a big change for me, and I really struggled. Everything was new. It was all so alien to me and so different to what I'd known at my previous schools. And I remember thinking, this is really scary and I can't control it, but I can control my eating. It was as simple as that. That was what I felt I could control. And, I was your typical anorexic, high achiever, perfectionist. I did a lot of sport. I swam in the swimming team. I played in the squash team. And I ate very little and my weight went down. And that was the beginning of it. I then, thankfully, my parents realised that things weren't good, so they sent me back to school in Paris, finished schooling there, took a gap year, went to university, and things improved, but they improved to a certain point. I still had a lot of rules around food. I wouldn't let myself go above a certain weight. And it was all very structured and restricting. When I was at university, I split up with a boyfriend, and that caused a relapse, and I got to a very low weight. But it's weird looking back on it because nobody really said anything. No, I think my parents were worried, but in those days, it wasn't really, people didn't know how to treat an eating disorder. It just wasn't talked about as it is nowadays. So I lost the weight, but thankfully I then started going out with my now husband and things naturally got better very easily. I can't even remember how the weight got back on, but it did. And we got married within 9 months, all very quick, but we're still married now after 31 years, so it was obviously the right thing to do. I got the weight back on, but again, there was a number on the scales that I would not let myself go above. And in our first few years of marriage, before we had children, it was perfect for me. My husband was a workaholic, I was an anorexic. Perfect mix. He was off working, I could stay at home and starve myself, and he didn't question it. Then we had children, and the pregnancies were actually fine, because I'd always dreamt of being a mother, so I was desperate to be able to get pregnant, and I had to be on fertility drugs because I'd messed my whole system up. But I did get pregnant. Neither of the pregnancies I had were easy. The second one was twins, and I was in hospital for 10 weeks before they were born. And I remember the food was absolutely disgusting, but I was actually quite pleased about that because it meant I didn't want to eat it. I wasn't tempted. And at one point, I think the doctor did say, you really need to be eating more. So I think it must have been noticed. And I said, yes, said all the right things, and then carried on not eating it. Had the twins, came out of hospital, and 3 children under 20 months, life just carried on. My weight was, I suppose, safe enough at the very low end. Didn't get low enough to cause people major concern, but my head was so full of rules and what I could do, what I couldn't do, weighing myself every day, feeling good or bad, depending on the number that was on the scales. It was exhausting. It was so exhausting. And it was when I was 36, we went skiing and I had a bad skiing accident. I went to the clinic at the ski centre. I was stretchered down to the clinic and they said I'd done something to my knee, I'd need major surgery, and they said you won't be able to exercise for 9 months. And I remember hobbling out of that clinic and thinking, no exercise, no food. And that day I had an apple and it didn't get much better from there. So I very quickly lost a lot of weight again. And by this stage, the children were sort of 10, 11. And at that point, my husband said, you need to get some serious help. You need to be in hospital, which I point blank refused. I said, if you put me in hospital, I'll climb out of the window, which I think I would have done actually, because with 3 young children, I wasn't going to go into hospital. So I was very fortunate that there was a woman locally. We lived in Sussex at the time, and she'd set up this centre, and I went to her for 18 months. I didn't stay overnight because of the children, but they had to be looked after, sort of after school and things. It was really, really hard, but I went breakfast to after supper every day for 18 months, Monday to Friday. And I made so much progress. I really did. I came on such a long way. Came out of there 18 months later, shouting from the rooftops that I was recovered, really proud of myself, telling everybody how amazing it was. I wasn't anorexic anymore. We then moved to Madrid for 4 years, where, again, I was a lot better, but I weighed myself every day. If we were going out to supper in the evening, I wouldn't eat during the day, make sure I went on a run or did exercise. The rules were still there. I didn't realise it at the time. I thought I was so much better, but looking back, I really, really wasn't. Came back from Madrid, 3 teenagers, and as people with teenagers know, a lot of hormones going around. I had 2 16-year-olds and a 17-year-old, and it was the summer holidays, and I thought, I need to do something for myself. So, that's great, self-care. Sadly, the self-care, the form it took, was going to the gym. And, yep, you guessed it, I went back downhill again. And it wasn't even intentional, because the gym I found really helpful, but obviously, as in it got me out on my own without the children. But as the weight went down, the anorexic voice just came back in without me even trying. That's what was so scary. And I think it's because I hadn't recovered properly. I had not really, really challenged that anorexic voice properly. So it was sitting there dormant, and it's like a fire was lit. So then it was bad for a year or so, really bad, but I refused help. Everybody was very worried, but I just was stuck. I was absolutely stuck. I hated the life I was living. I hated being like that, but I didn't know how to get out of it. And I was scared. I was really scared. Who would I be without anorexia? I'd always been Caroline the tiny one, Caroline the thin one, Caroline with amazing willpower, Caroline the sporty one. Well, if that was all taken away from me, I just didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I just didn't think I could do it. So it was safer to just stick with anorexia, but it was miserable. And one morning I got up, had a shower. I was sitting at my dressing table and drying my hair, and I looked down at my legs, and I remember it so clearly now. I looked down and I thought, they're disgusting. And it was like a veil had been lifted. And I saw them for what they were. And I know there's so much more to an eating disorder than the size of your legs, but that just encompassed everything for me. I thought, is this my life? And from that moment, I realized I wanted to get better. Deep down, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I just decided then, this is it. This is the time. This is my time to recover. And I did it. And it didn't happen overnight. Of course it didn't. And there were so many bumps along the way. But I did it. And I cannot tell you how much better my life is now. My identity is just so much bigger than it was, and so much better. I'm living a life that I never imagined I would be able to live. My relationship with my husband, my relationship with my children, my relationship with the rest of my family and friends, my work. I'm now a health coach and an eating disorder therapist. I help people with eating disorders, and I get it. I really get it. And it was a struggle. And the last thing to really come together was the body image. I struggled with living in a larger body than I was used to. I'd never lived in a body that size before. And, when I first was recovering, I kept the scales. Well, soon I realized that they're just the work of the devil. So I chucked them out. I had to chuck out all my clothes. It was a process. It was a long process. But I got there, and I just want to say to you today, never, ever give up hope. And of course, I wouldn't wish 30 years of an eating disorder on anybody, but it just proves that it's possible to recover fully, however deeply entrenched an eating disorder is. So I really hope that all of you suffering with loved ones with an eating disorder, going through it, I understand. I understand how desperate you are, how worried you are, but carry on hoping. Thank you.